Proverbs chapter 3, verses 1 to 12. My son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart, for they will prolong your life many years and bring you peace and prosperity. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves. As a father, the son he delights in. The world runs on what could be called implicit trust. Implicit trust. It's the type of trust that you don't even know that you're operating on, but it's there underneath your decisions. For example, a husband and a wife could have a conversation Saturday morning and say, hey, I'll meet you at our kids' soccer game. This is not a personal example. We always go together. And the wife would not even consider that the husband would stop, instead of doing the soccer game, go to EQC for some little morning, Saturday morning slots. That would not even be a consideration. I thought that was going to be a little bit more funny. It wasn't. It's not even considered. Why? Because there's this implicit trust that what we agree upon we're doing, right? If you bring a $20 bill, if you still do that thing, and put it down at the grocery store, at the person at the checkout line, because you decide you want to interact with a human being and not do self-checkout. If you do the paper thing and the real person thing, that person will take the $20 bill and they won't even question that this piece of paper has some type of value. Why? Because there's this implicit trust that this piece of paper equals something beyond its value in just paper. This implicit trust is animating and making things work in the world. If you go to your favorite restaurant, whether it's Wooden City or McDonald's, I don't know why it would be McDonald's, but I'm sorry. No shame. I do love the line, I forget who it was, but some comedian said, everybody hates on McDonald's, but it's still the highest grossing, so everybody's not telling the world their secret that they still go to McDonald's. But if you go to your favorite restaurant, you go there because there's this implicit trust that what you order will be what you get. The world runs on this stuff. There's this implicit trust that every 2 weeks or once a month, whenever it is, you'll get a paycheck, and you don't even think about it because you're just believing that it will happen. Now, if you take that out of the world starts to break apart. Relationships break apart. Society breaks apart. Organizations break apart because if you don't have implicit trust, it is actually incredibly hard to live. Now, Solomon, in chapter 3, the passage we read, he's making a case that wisdom, true wisdom, is embodied in a person who has implicit trust in God. He says, trust in the Lord. That you would live your life in a way, just as you're going to use the money and nobody's going to question it. You're going to meet your spouse and you're not going to even think about somebody going someplace else. You're going to go to your favorite restaurant and you're going to order the thing that you like because you know the thing that you like, and there's this implicit trust, just like that you would place yourself in a relationship with God where that you would just trust him. You'd just be trusting him. Trust in the Lord. He says, with all your heart. Heart in Hebrew is more than just that sappy, sentimental thing that we bring out on Valentine's Day. It's actually the center of your being, the center of your life. In the Hebrew mind, that's what heart is. Solomon is saying, trust in the Lord from the center of your being. Trust him just implicitly from the center of who you are. And then you jump down a line and it says, all your ways, and all your heart, in all your ways. Notice the repetition. We're seeing some poetry happening here. The repetition of all of your heart, the center of your being, in all of your ways. Every single way you live, all the things that you do, everything from your finances, how you handle your home finances, your workplace, trust him in your workplace, whether it's some type of Christian workplace or not really a Christian workplace at all, trust him in your workplace. Trust him in your family, how you interact with your kids, how you interact with your spouse, how you interact with mom and dad. Trust him in those areas. Trust him with regards to your future, with regards to all the unknowns and all the things that you're not quite sure how they're going to line up. Trust him there. Trust him with the center of your being in all of your ways. This is what Solomon is saying. This is wisdom. To trust God at the core of who you are with regard to all of your life. And it goes on, he says, submit. In all your ways, submit to him. We use the NIV here at Anchor Church, and we think it's a great translation, but the word submit there, and in other translations it's acknowledge. It's a fine translation, but the actual Hebrew word is yada, which means to know. Bruce Waltke, a commentator, scholar that we're drawing from heavily through this teaching series, says that it's a relational type of knowing. Like to know like a person, to know me and you in relationship. That's the type of knowing that's being communicated. So you could say that what Solomon is saying is that to trust him is to know him. And to know him is to trust him. That if you know him, if you know God, you'll know that he is trustworthy. And if you trust God, it's evidence that you truly know God. To know him is to trust him, and to trust him is to know him. I have a friend who is a professor, and he's studied trust extensively. He's looked at how trust is accrued in relationships, interpersonal relationships. He's looked at how trust is developed internationally, across countries, and through companies working together and organizations partnering. He's studied it, and he tells me that there are 3 components of trust, or 3 catalysts of trust, 3 causes of trust. And the first is benevolence. Benevolence, meaning kindness, but not benevolence in the sense of like a gift that we expect an ROI on. Do you know what ROI means? Return on investment. Have you ever had one of those where you thought somebody was just doing something nice, but they kept on having their hand out? And so there's this sense of wanting something back. And sometimes that's how relationships work, and I scratch your back, you scratch mine, and that's fine. But what he's saying, trust is really established when there is this gift that's coming, this generosity for generosity's sake. This builds trust because it tells me I'm interested in you, not interested in what you can do for me. The second thing is integrity. Now, he makes a point of telling me this isn't like moral integrity. This is this sense of symmetry in all of your life. That you will be the same person to me in a conversation over coffee as you will be on social media. And you'll be the same person you will be with me as you will be in conversations with your family. That you'll be the same person with me in a phone call or texting than you will be in the church lobby. Maybe that stepped on a toe. This is integrity. And the reason why this is important for trust is because when I know that you're going to be the same person in all the different spheres that you occupy, I know I can trust you. Benevolence, integrity. And the third thing is ability. Do you have the ability to make good on your commitments? If you have all three of these things together, benevolence, integrity, and ability, you have trust. This is, you could say, a safe person. You can let your guard down. This is a safe company. I can let my guard down. And this is the kind of thing that, like, when you think about each of these three things, benevolence, integrity, and ability, what, again, my friend says are really the causes, the catalysts, the components of trust. Each of these three things is only seen through time, through knowing, through paying attention, through being with. So going back to that verse, to know him is to trust him. You cannot trust God unless you stay with him long enough. Unless you pay attention to him, as long as you stick around, not hop in for a moment, but walk with for a while. Then you get to see that he is benevolent, that he is generous, that he is interested in you, not just interested in what you can do for him. You'll see that he is integrity. He is the same person as he was in the scriptures, as he is right now, as he's interacting with you. He is consistent across time, across relationships, across geography, across language. He is the same God. And he is able. You only get to know him as if you keep with him. And you only get to trust him as if you know him. Years ago, my friend got back from a summer camp, and he said, they told me I should get a mentor. And I was very young in my faith, so I didn't know what a mentor was. It sounds like, a little bit like some type of Star Wars thing or something like that, mentor. And I don't know, maybe I just didn't know the English language that well. And so I said, well, what's a mentor? And he goes, well, I think it's just somebody that you get coffee with and you read the Bible with. And I'm like, okay, don't know if I like coffee yet, but I probably could do that. Sounds like something I should get. I should get a mentor. So I asked one of the only people I knew that was older than me, that was a follower of Jesus. I asked that person to be my mentor. And he said yes after he thought about it for a little while. He said he had to pray about it, which didn't make me feel that good. It's like, what? Look at me. I'm pretty good stuff here. What do you have to pray about? He prayed about it. God said yes, so I felt better. But I remember at a certain point early in my mentorship relationship with this man who was older than me, and I said, you know what? I've probably been walking with the Lord for about 8 or 9 months. I said, I could take all of Christianity. I can take all of it. The cross, love the cross. Freedom for me, resurrection, yes, power, proves that the work on the cross was effective, shows the power of God, the Spirit, love the Spirit, the Bible, love the Bible. But then there's this part, I'm taking all of this, that one, I'm just gonna pretend it doesn't exist. That one is over there. Again, I was early on in my faith. And you know what, this mentor, he could have said a lot of things at that particular moment. He could have said, you dummy, Lord and Savior. You gotta say yes to all of it. You can't just carve out your own little cafeteria of Christianity. That's not how it works. And he would have been right, but I don't know what my reaction would have been. Instead, he said this, and I think it's total mentor judo. He said, oh, Well, let's just keep walking with Jesus together and see what happens. I guess I would say to you, if you find yourself new to the faith, or maybe kind of like wondering if you will say yes to Jesus, you're just putting yourself in places where you're learning about him, you're wondering about him, and you're figuring yourself like, yes, this resonates, but I've got questions over here. I would just tell you what my mentor told me. Let's just keep walking with Jesus and see what happens. Because here's what happens. When you start to walk with him, you start to trust him. Why? Because you start to know him. And you start to find out that he is trustworthy. Trust accrues through time because trust is a relational property. You know, when you think about God, like throughout all of history, how God has interacted. God, throughout all of history, like all of history, God's interactions have been so that we might know him. He creates a world and he speaks to his image bearers. Why? So that we might know him. He sends prophets. Why? So that we might know him. He gives dreams and images and words and his Bible and sends his son so that he might be God in the flesh. Why? So that we might know him. He sends his spirit into our lives to be with us so that we might know him, but not only that we might know him, so that the world might know him, because God is a God that is not a disinterested God that's just wondering, hey, I'll just see what happens with this thing that I made, like it's some type of science experiment. But he's a God that's invested in his creation, and he wants us to know him. Why? So that we might trust him. Because when you know him, you trust him. Trust him with all your heart, in all your ways. And then there's this other part. Lean not on your own understanding. Now, what is being communicated here? Does it mean we're all just dim and dumb or something? You guys are pretty smart people. The key to understanding what Solomon is communicating here is in the verb lean. Lean. Lean connotes placing the weight of your life on something. What Solomon is saying here, he's saying that your life is so precious that it actually requires not placing the weight of your life on your own understanding. It's too significant to place on your own understanding. When you lean on your own understanding, it's a broken crutch that will make you fall down. You can't lean on your own understanding. You're too significant for that. Your life's too important for that. Too important to lean on your own understanding. Why is your own understanding not worthy of leaning on? For at least 3 reasons. The first is that your understanding, our understanding, my understanding is limited. It's limited. It's incredibly limited. Our wisdom seems really great. iPhones and all. But it is a thimble of water, while God's is an unending ocean. Put in that light, seeing our wisdom as pretty significant actually comes off as arrogant. We need to put our wisdom and our understanding in check and recognize that from the jump, it's limited. Second, it's fallible. Our understanding is infected with our own desires that can often lead us not only off the path, but if we let it, off the cliff. And if you don't know that about your own desires, then you might not know yourself. So it's limited, it's fallible, and third, it's inconsistent. Your understanding, my understanding, it's inconsistent. It's often like a ping pong ball. bouncing back and forth against the latest trends, and whoever's in power is setting the latest, whatever's moral and whatever's cool and whatever's fashionable and whatever's to be drunk down and imbibed by whoever's saying it out there. And we bounce back and forth across the walls of the latest trends, and it's inconsistent. One day we're saying this thing, 3 years later we're saying another thing. God's wisdom is consistent, it's infallible, and it's not limited. And so that's why we lean on his understanding and we don't lean on our understanding. That's why we trust in him with all of our heart and in all of our ways, with our future and our finances and our family and everything else. We give him everything. Because while ours is limited, his is not. While ours is fallible, his is not. While ours is inconsistent, his is not. To know him is to trust him. Solomon wants us to understand that this is not just kind of like a good thing to file away, like not just like, oh, this is a nice truth that I'll think about at some point, put a little bookmark there, return to it. He wants us to get that this is urgent. That this thing that we're talking about today, that placing our trust leaning on him, our lives leaning on him rather than our own understanding. It's urgent. Why? Because we are 15 minutes, we are 15 seconds away from a big mess up every day of our life. But not only that, again, our lives are significant. Our lives are important. See, he says this, he says, my son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart. You get the urgency there? He's like, think about, this is like a dad who's dropping off his kid at college and he's looking at the dorm and seeing his kid walk in and you're like, that one looks bad. Don't talk to that one. Like, get it, do you remember what I said? I'm just imagining what I'm going to be like at that day. But Solomon is saying that is every day. That every day is that important. That every day is the big game. Every day is the big transition. Because every day there is stuff on the line that's really significant. Because your life is really significant. He says something similar just in verse 3. He says, let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Pay attention to the bodily language there. Neck, the place where our breath is. In the Hebrew mind, it's the idea of this life is here. Breath is here. Breathing comes in and out through the neck. The thing that keeps the life, make sure to put it there. And the thing that is the center of our being, the heart, write it there. Put it in your body. Get it as close to you as you can. Let the understanding and the wisdom of God and your trust in him be the normal for your life. Can you do this? Solomon is telling his son. I remember at an urgent point in early stages of church planting, I called a mentor, somebody who had planted a church and had some success, and I was like kind of in crisis. And which is like, if you're a church planter, like every other week or so, And I was like, I don't know what to do. And he gave me wisdom, which was great. But what I'm saying here is that this is kind of the tone that the father is giving to the son here. He's giving this type of tone where it's like, recognize that every day is urgent. That it's not tomorrow is a great time to start trusting God. Now is the great time. Now is the right time to start trusting God. The stakes are always high. They're high for like at least two reasons, and I've alluded to this already. The first is that like none of us really knows, even those of us that are trying to understand, none of us really know the influence that we carry around with us. And when you don't know the influence you carry around with you, you will either harm yourself or harm another person. I had a young leader tell me recently, that he had to apologize. Not because he did anything crazy big, but he was kind of throwing some flippant comments out in casual interactions. And he didn't think much of it, but somebody came up to him and said, you don't recognize that this is kind of a significant thing, but we see you as a leader. And so when you say this, it's not just peer to peer, it's as leader to people that are looking to you. And so it actually cuts deeper than just kind of a nice little funny joke. It cuts below the surface. He wasn't aware of the influence he was carrying around with him. I've had similar interactions and similar things. You aren't aware, moms and dads, of the influence. Even if you're mindful of it, you're still not aware of the influence you carry. And you're also not aware of how some of the decisions will affect your own life. Because of this, our lives are precious cargo, as they will affect others and they will affect ourselves. And we're inextricably tied into that. There's no escaping it. So it is right that you trust in God and not on yourself, with all of yourself in all of your ways. And the second reason why this is urgent is because the Father wants you to experience his joy. God is such a good God that he wants you to experience his joy. Now, if you've studied Proverbs before, one of the main mantras of Proverbs is Proverbs aren't promises, meaning that when it says this will happen, it's not saying it's always going to happen in every situation. It's saying that there's a high likelihood of it happening. But here, throughout this passage, there are these almost promises. They're almost promises. They're not promises, but they're almost promises. Check it out. When we place our trust in God, when we remember his wisdom, when we lean not on our own understanding, but on his, verse 2, for they will prolong your life many years and bring you peace and prosperity. When you align yourself with the Creator's ways, you often stumble on everything you need. Verse 4, then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. When you live a life of integrity, when you live a life that is consistent with the way of Jesus, people will notice. And sometimes they may disagree on certain things, but they will notice that you live a life of consistency and integrity and purpose. And they will pay attention to you and they will start gathering around you. Mark my words. This is why we hate hypocrites, is because we find out that there's something that's been so inconsistent that we get really angry. But when people live symmetrical lives, lives of integrity, we become compelled by them. We gather around them. That's what Proverbs is saying. You will win favor and a good name. Verse 6, he will make your path straight. In a confused world, you will always know the path forward. When you align yourself with God in a confused world, you will always know the path forward. Sometimes it might be hard, but you'll always know the way forward. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing. Verse 10, their barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. Again, abundance. When you align yourself with the Creator of the world, you'll trip on everything you need. The Lord, verse 12, the Lord disciplines those he loves as a father, the son he delights in. The Lord is so invested in you that he will direct and guide you, even if sometimes his direction and guidance is firm. So here's this invitation right now to everyone here, where you're sitting right now, not to some later self, not to some past self, but to you right now sitting on the chair. And if you're watching at home, you're probably sitting on a more comfortable chair or a sofa. The invitation to you right now is to trust him. To trust him. To trust him with your life, to trust him with your future, to trust him with your finances, to trust him with your family, to trust him with your marriage, to trust him with your dating relationship, to trust him with your romance, your sexuality, your class schedule, to trust him in every area of your life, to trust him, to not lean on your own understanding, to not put the weight of your life on something that doesn't have the resources to carry it, to put the resources or the weight of your life on the one who alone has the ability to carry it. He wants to take your burden from you, to put it onto his shoulders and give you his easy yoke. The invitation is extended to you. Now, I want you to imagine almost like when you get like invitation. When the invitation's given to you, it's your responsibility. You can open it up, check confirmed. It's already posted, hopefully. Put it back in the mailbox. Or you can bury it under a couple books and some junk mail. But the invitation has been extended. When I think about why people would say no to this invitation to trust, I can think of 3 reasons. The first is maybe harm has hurt your ability to trust. Something in the past that someone has done has affected your vision of the future, so that you can't look on current situations with anything but suspicion. And you're discerning some type of ulterior motive in every interpersonal interaction. I just would like to say, if that's you, and I know some of us in the room, it's us. I had this little image, and we were worshiping, I had this little image of somebody like huddled in darkness being found by Jesus. And it might have been nothing more than just an interesting image, but maybe some of that's what maybe some of us feel like that, where we're just kind of huddled down in darkness. Like Jesus, the type of God that finds us in the middle of that darkness. If that's you, it's completely understandable why you have a hard time trusting, but it is incredibly lonely and exhausting to stay there. To know him is to trust him. Take note of what he has done on your behalf, how his love was poured out on the cross, how he too was hurt by those that were close to him. He is worthy of your trust. Second reason why we might balk at the invitation is we have compartmentalized belief, where we have kind of like a theological assent, but we kind of have stopped really actually trusting. We theologically believe, we think, but we actually haven't been following him in our everyday life. And this is just not enough for God. He doesn't want a check mark. He doesn't want theological assent alone. He wants your heart and your ways. Why? Because he's a good God, and he doesn't want you putting the freight of your life on something that can't carry it. Your heart and your ways. You have to reckon, will I give my whole self to him? And the third reason I can see why we might balk at the invitation is it's just we're doing it, but we've been doing it out of duty and obligation for so long. We can't even tell why we're doing it. And if that's you, I just would say maybe the invitation is to allow the Holy Spirit to bring freshness to your faith. Some of us need to allow the Holy Spirit to come and bring freshness to our faith. The band can come up at this point. But all of us right now have this invitation in our hand. And we have to make some decision. What am I going to do with it? Will I trust him? Will I trust him? It's an invitation that's given to you, men. Will you trust him? It's an invitation that's given to you, women. Will I trust him? It's an invitation that's given to you, every generation. Will you trust him? Let me just tell you that if you get on the path with him, you'll find over time that he is trustworthy. Why? Because you will increasingly get to know him. To know him is to trust him. Some of you might be making that decision for the first time. And if that's you, I want to just invite you to the party where we just sing, we pray, we take communion, all as a way of reminding ourselves of the power and love of God. So there's prayer stations available on both sides. That's for you. If you're saying yes to Jesus for the first time, something that is welling up within you and you need prayer, or it's just something small, that's available for you to pray with another person. There's communion available, and communion is this way where we remind ourselves that God is not only trustworthy, but he is so loving, that he would pour out his own life so that we might have true life, that he would give of his riches so that we might not dwell in poverty, so that we might be reconciled to the God that is good and the God that is holy. So let's come to the party where we get to celebrate and be reminded of the goodness of God and his sacrifice and his provision through prayer and communion. I'd invite you to stand if you're able as I pray. Spirit of the living God, come and fill this place, fill our hearts. Move us to live lives of deep trust in you. In a world of uncertainty, help us to live with this deep confidence that you are good, even as things are confusing, that you are true in a world of blur. Spirit of the living God, come in this place, we ask in your name, recognizing that it is to know you is to trust you, and to trust you is to know you. Amen.